Hey everybody, this is Chris Cosentino, and we are sitting here in the newest episode of Losing Your Mind with Chris Cosentino, and I am sitting here with Andrew Zimmern. How are you, Andrew?
I'm great.
I love it. So what's going on?
Just got into town.
Yeah?
We're sitting here in, can I tell them where we are?
Sure.
We're hiding out in the PDR at Jackrabbit.
Yep. AKA the rabbit hole, we call it.
At the Dunaway in Portland. And I love things. I love spontaneity in life because I'm an overplanned person. So I was on the plane texting you from my phone, and you said, do you want to do my podcast? And I said, sure. How about this afternoon? And that was like 3 hours ago.
Which I was shocked. I had no idea you were coming. No idea you were coming to town. I love it. Well, it's
I didn't really know I was coming here, but we're shooting for my as yet to be announced new show, and it's part of our addiction and alcoholism episode.
Amazing.
And we're shooting at the Zero Proof dinner here on Friday night that I was a part of last year as a participant. Yep. And that Gabe Rucker created. And so I came in a night early from Phoenix, where I was shooting our voter suppression episode of the new show. And
I'm sure that was interesting.
I was psyched. I'm like, I need an extra. It's great to have an extra night here in a town that I never get to enough. I love Portland, especially at this time of year. So yes, here I am.
Portland is magic. I mean, every time I come here, I'm always inspired, and it's truly an artisan craftsman community, whether it's bicycle building or food or cheese making or farmers. I mean, huge hemp industry, cannabis industry. You have leather work. You have beautiful clothing.
DIY all the way.
Oh, yeah.
Intricate Japanese desserts to winemaking. I mean, it's crazy what's gone on here. And tons of beer. And over the years, I've been lucky enough to document a lot of it in different shows. We did a Zimmern list here, a Delicious Destinations here, a Bizarre Foods here. I'm blanking on another one that I made here. And it's great because there are certain cultures, like I say the word New Orleans, and you can smell it and taste it, right? And hear it, right? You can feel it all. Portland has its own identity, and there's a lot of cities that claim to want to have the same kind of mojo that Portland has, but unless you actually have a personality that everyone can identify, it's kind of hard. This place you can identify, and now the food scene is just explosively good.
I think this is the only place where you can have Darth Vader in a kilt on a unicycle playing the bagpipes with flames coming out of it just on a street corner.
Correct. And he might not be a crazy person in need of assistance.
No, he's probably just an artist.
Exactly. And that is, I hear this from people all the time who carry around some kind of, and I feel sorry for them, but they carry around a natural cultural bias that anything that looks, thinks, or smells different to them has to be a troubling situation.
Oh, yeah.
And I always talk about, Portland and the street scene here, where there's lots of people just, they come out of their 9-to-5 job at the accounting company and go right out and start playing music on the street. And I'm just, they're not necessarily people who need anything other than us enjoying their art. I was coming out of the hotel that I stayed in the last time I was here, and there was one of those, you've probably seen them around town. There's 2 or 3, these spontaneous poets. And what you do is they have a typewriter and a little table, and you sit down and they ask you like 4 or 5 very generic questions about your life. And then they write a poem for you, and you give them a couple dollars, suggested donation. And the poem is oftentimes just incredibly meaningful. Now, I've done it twice, and when I got to the hotel, he wasn't there. And I'm now like, I need to bump into this guy because I have them framed in my house. So, yeah, Portland's magical.
That's unreal.
Yeah, it's magical.
So, Andrew, there's so many things that you've done along the road. We've known each other for how many years?
A long time.
Long time. We'll leave it as a long time. And I think, your road to where you are now is very different from you worked professionally in the kitchens.
Yeah.
You've talked openly about your addiction.
Yeah. I lost my mind and then I found it.
That's a very familiar thing here too. And I get that. And I think you have really been a major outspoken person about people learning to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's huge, because there's a part of people, the fear, like you just mentioned a moment ago, which was about the fear of somebody looking different or something tasting different or smelling different. People are afraid to talk about being different.
We have developed a culture, and I mean, this is quantifiable. It's historical, it's sociological, it's culture. We have developed a society that messages to the individuals here that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Now, when you go back to earliest days of our hominid existence, I'm talking 40,000 years, communication and asking for help was always a sign of strength. It's never been a sign of weakness. In the most successful communities that you can identify on the planet, in the most successful corporate cultures, artistic communities, tribes, however you choose to define them, any gathered group that is working towards a common goal, the most successful groups are the ones where asking for help is seen as a sign of strength, because it forgives anyone for the way their box on top of their neck might process information. And we all process information differently. So in the pursuit of trying to get the best out of people and for people to perform at their peak, the last thing you want is for somebody to be listening to a tape in their head that says, I can't tell the truth, I can't ask for help, I can't be who I really am. When we create a culture that allows for that, it is the dignity and respect that allows people to flourish and grow and realize their full potential. And whether it's a cook in the kitchen, a musician in a band, an accountant in at Ernst & Young, a lawyer, you name it, they are more productive, more responsible, a better member of society. And I think it's a crucial. I learned it in the early days of my recovery when everybody pointed out to me that I was an obnoxious know-it-all and that my best thinking had gotten my life so fucked up. So why was I trusting what I thought about a given situation to be true?
That's a good point.
If every piece of empirical data showed that my best thinking got me almost dead, homeless for a year, and thankfully shipped to a treatment center in the middle of the, Great White North. Why would I think that my best thinking could start to make decisions for my life just because I put the cork in the bottle and put away the drugs? My sponsor in the 12-step program that I regularly attend beat it into me, and thank God for him, that you can act your way into right thinking, but you can't think your way into right acting. And I think that's the great lesson that there is in life, is you actually have to be a human doing. Being a human being is not quite enough. It's stagnant. The only fish that float are dead. You got to be moving, got to be doing.
I'm actually dumbfounded right now, because I think that's really, look, let's be honest. I've called you how many times when the ship is sinking?
Plenty.
But
that's because we're friends in real life. We also began our friendship being very, very, very honest with each other. And can I tell this story?
Sure.
Because I think it's something that's actually not done enough. So we had known each other professionally for a couple of years, but then the first year of Bizarre Foods, we did an episode. Actually, I think it was for a piece of branded content that I was doing.
Was it the truck?
Actually, yeah. And so it predates, this is 15 years ago. And we spent the day together and with lots of fun. Two guys, ebullient, enjoying each other's company, having fun, great day, all the rest of that kind of stuff. And we then sat in a car that was going to take us. We had to shoot a scene in a car. And we had an issue with camera timing, this, that, and the other thing. And we had like 20 minutes just sitting in the back of an air-conditioned car parked on the street. And I forget who went first, but I believe I said something to you like, how's it going with the rest of your life or whatever, now most people, when I say that to them, you don't get an honest answer. I try to give an honest answer to people. I mean, look, not absolute complete strangers. I mean, at this point in my life, there's a certain level of transparency and trust. Someone has to earn that for at least 10 minutes before I'm going to dump my real life shit on them, because that's very valuable. That's really important stuff, right? And I need to know someone's going to be a good caretaker of that. But I said, what's going on? And you actually looked at me. Oh, I know what it was. I had just gotten off. I was on a phone call for the first 5 minutes, and it was not a good phone call. It involved some messy family situation. And you were in the car with me and you heard it. And then I turned to you and I kind of rolled my eyes. I said, how are you? And you responded with a bunch of real life stuff that you were having a tough time with. And then I got to, and we talked for like 20 minutes about this because we both have kids the same age. We'd been married about the same amount of time. I mean, just we had a lot in common away from our professional lives. And we had a really, really good talk about it. And from that moment on, after that 20 minutes, we actually were very close. I talked to you about real life stuff that I don't talk to other people about, and you talk to me about real life stuff that I know you don't share freely with very many people but that's how you get close to someone, by offering up something. You take a risk. If you don't take a risk, if you don't invest in the loss, you're never going to find those people that you can connect with and be close with. And I know I can call you up and say the craziest shit or tell you I've done something awful, and you're not going to judge me, and you're just going to be there with me in it. And most importantly, because you've been through the ringer, you're not going to try to fix it right away. You're going to be my friend. And it is a new thing that I've learned. A lot of those other things I learned a long time ago. But the newest thing that I learned is actually kind of fascinating. And I think we talked about this once on one of those phone calls. I've been sober almost 28 years, and the last 15 years really focusing on what a lot of people call emotional sobriety, right? So I'm not worried about drinking tonight, but I am worried about being an asshole to someone. I mean, there's a much greater chance of that happening than me going out and having a beer. So I always go away and, I do workshops at places like On Site in Tennessee, or the Meadows in Arizona, or Hazelden, Betty Ford in Minnesota where I live, or, wherever I happen to be. There's great programs around where I can do a 3 or 4 day, 5 day workshop on, living more centered, or trauma, or intimacy, just stuff that advances, that just working on myself, right? And at one of these workshops, I learned something super, super valuable. And the idea was this: you got to co-regulate with someone else before you operationalize. Otherwise, you don't build trust and empathy and safety. Now, that sounds like, what? So, got to co-regulate with someone before you operationalize. Otherwise, you don't build safety and empathy and connection. So what's a great example? And I know you'll be able to relate to this. So I come home and I pull into the driveway and I'm freaking out, and I race into the house and to whoever's there. Significant other, wife, best friend, whatever, kid, whatever. Oh my God, I lost my phone. And I think I left it at work, but I don't really know where it is. And I have to it's the only information for the, whatever, buying the car, closing the house, the kids meeting at school is on the phone, and blah, 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 blah. And you're freaking out. And if the person there looks at you and says, did you call the security person at the office? you're lost. Because I'm not looking for I'm an adult. I'm not looking for someone to tell me what to do, operationalize.
You want somebody to hear you.
I just want someone excited to say, oh my God, that's awful. And the moment that someone says, oh my God, that's awful, I'm like, yeah, it's terrible. And then they're like, well, what should we do? Or do you want to, what can we do? It instantaneously, the co-regulation can be one sentence. But if you operationalize first, you've lost. And without doing that, we don't have empathy and connection and understanding. And I think all of these things, asking for help, acting your way into right thinking, co-regulating before operationalizing, are one by one these kind of rules in life that I kind of collect, and then you actually have to practice them like putting. Because the guys that I mentor...
What's putting?
Putting, golf.
I don't know that sport.
Oh, yeah.
That's the Happy Gilmore thing, right?
That's the Happy Gilmore thing.
Okay, yeah, I know that. Yeah.
But for people, there's so many folks who, like, if they want to... they say they play golf, and they practice all winter on the little putting green in the office of the house, or they go down to the driving range or whatever. And that's smart. You're practicing. So if you want to evolve life skills and spiritual principles, you have to actually practice them. So when the shit hits the fan, you act automatically rather than get in your head. It's like shooting. That's why these NBA guys, shoot 500 free throws at the end of practice, because when it's 2 seconds left on the buzzer, down by 1, 2-shot foul, they want to step to the line and drain 2. It's that simple.
With all the noise and people taunting them.
Practice.
And I think that's a really, people need to feel that they're being heard, especially when they are going pear-shaped.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest mistake that's currently, it happens all the time and people don't realize it. They're in fear of what the individual's talking about a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Whether it's a mental health issue or an addiction issue.
Yeah.
The instant reaction is to give direction first.
Or judge.
Or just, I don't have time for that, because they're afraid of it.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part, because some of those folks, all they need to hear is, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll de-escalate, so then the problem can be solved.
Yep.
And alleviate pressure on everyone, and make that individual feel safe enough to let more out of the bag, so that you can really figure out what the real problem is.
1,000%. And we have so many people now, it's hard for me, and I talk to a lot of professionals about this. It's hard for we hear that numbers are escalating. Suicide, depression issue, all that kind of stuff is just getting bigger. Things are worse and worse and worse. And I do believe that there is some trauma from the last 2 or 3 years in this country that people are feeling across the board, whether it's children in gun violence in our schools that have to learn a different way of behaving and thinking that is its own implied creating its own trauma, whether it's the situation at our borders, how we're treating our immigrant and migrant community in this country, where there's a chilling atmosphere of fear that's pervasive there that is traumatizing. We keep traumatizing more groups of people in this country than so I believe the numbers are going up. I believe that data to be true. I also believe empirically that we also have, on the good side, created a slightly better atmosphere, because I see it in social. People love to, shit shame the whole social thing. And yes, there are lots of problems with social media. However, I also see a lot of benefit in collective groupthink, and I see benefit in people just going online and seeing when someone posts something like, "You're good enough, just wanted you to know that today." And it's just or one of those pictures of the little cat hanging from the chin-up bar, hang in there. Those are the little things that may help someone get, 1 more hour along in their day without melting down. I do believe we have to have a national conversation about this, from a tactical standpoint. It's why I'm also working with a lot of different organizations on getting the mental health parity laws some more teeth. A long time ago, Senator Paul Wellstone from Minnesota, was the big proponent of the mental health parity law, so that anyone with a mental health issue could get the same insurance, the same treatment, the same patience, tolerance, and understanding that someone who had a broken leg has if they walked into an emergency room. And we've taken our counselors, we still have school nurses in our schools, but we've taken mental health counselors and other paraprofessionals out of our school system, right? To identify young people. Can't afford them.
Can't even afford the books
but we
or
can't,
school lunch.
Right. But we also can't afford, like lunch, like books, to, in my opinion, not have them in schools.
I agree.
Because we're paying for it down the road with escalation of violence issues in our criminal justice system, with our healthcare costs and all that other stuff skyrocketing. So we can pay a decent amount of money for it now or pay a lot more later. But if we don't start making some real substantive change with our mental health parity laws so that people with problems can actually get them addressed, we now have, look at the restaurant industry. You and I both own restaurants. We both cook. We do a lot of other things, right? But we do that. Our industry has become so much more engaged on this issue. It has become so much more, we're creating sustainable workplaces. We're listening better. We're caring more about the people who are in our environments. So if we identify these issues, what happens when that person actually goes to seek help and is like, and they're a server or a line cook and their insurance doesn't cover a $200 an hour shrink visit once a week? What if what they really need is to go somewhere for a week and get some real treatment for whatever the ism is? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Because sometimes 1 hour a week keeps you in the churn and burn. It's just the defective part of the system. To get by. So those are the things that concern me. So it's why I believe very strongly in, the power of legislative, dictum to help us solve problems too.
I think there's a whole slew of little pieces and puzzles that have created. I mean, there's the FOMO, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the anxiety of fear of missing out.
Yep.
And that has a lot to do with our phones. Like, we weren't constantly, and this is something that, I'm just as guilty as you are. How often are you on the phone?
Yep.
We are constantly in contact by email, text, phone, social media. Mm-hmm. Your phone's the new low jack, so you know where your kid is, or they know where you are. But also, when we're looking at these images of what people are doing, it creates anxiety in a lot of folks. It creates depression because nobody's posting. And the other day I was joking around with these guys and they were like, "Hey, chef, you want me to take a picture of you doing dishes?" Because the 2 dishwashers didn't show. And I was like, "I don't care. Do whatever you want. Like, it's life."
Yeah.
But nobody posts pictures of them having to do the dishes. They post pictures of the beautiful dinner plate or service in the fire.
Yes.
Nobody posts pictures of cleaning bathrooms.
I will say there are some leaders on this issue. I have seen, and obviously I know it on people who are in my feed. So it's, right. So it's sort of self-selecting. So I know that there's lots of other people that deserve a tip of the hat. But the first person that about a year and a half ago, my friend Michelle Branch, who's a singer-songwriter, married to Pat Carney of the Black Keys, posted a picture of herself without makeup. It was the first person I saw do that. It became really turned out it was part of like a thing where lots of, someone had said, "Hey, 1,000 powerful women out there, let's post pictures of ourselves." All the way up to last week, where I think it was Demi Lovato. Was it Demi Lovato who posted a picture of herself that wasn't photoshopped, where her body wasn't photoshopped? I hope I'm getting this right. But it was a famous young singer who said, "This is what my legs look like. I have cellulite, and so do 99% of all other women, and this is what a real woman's body looks like." Lena Dunham, does it. Sophia Bush does it. I mean, there's all these people who I see doing this. And I know that folks like you and I guess what it is if we compare how we feel inside with how someone else looks on the outside, we're in big trouble because every human being has giant-sized problems. If I look, I'll just use us as an example because it's us sitting here, right? There's one way to describe your story right now with all the things that are, I can paint the rosiest picture in the world, but it leaves out the real life problems, right? How exciting you've got a new restaurant that's opening in Texas, right? But I know as someone who travels for a living that that's a disruptor in your life as a husband and a dad. I have the same thing. I got a new show coming out in November. If it's successful, it means I'm going to be doing a lot more episodes at a time where I'm trying to stay home more to spend time with my kid. So there's a different side to everything. Everything is a trade-off. And the reality is I'm very grateful just personally for my life and what it's given me and the opportunities. At the same time, when someone says to me, I'm really struggling today and I'm kind of going out of my mind, I can just reach back to last night or this morning when I was struggling and going out of my mind because trying a couple fires at work, a couple fires at home, and I just felt overwhelmed. Luckily, I have a process in my life to help me match calamity with some little bit of serenity, and I did my little prayer, I did my little rituals that kind of calmed me down and just got quiet because I realized me getting all wound up doesn't make the problem go away.
No,
so I just need to calm down and do my little 5-minute meditation thing. But that is, we all are struggling
in our own way. Yeah.
Yeah. And someone posted, said T. Boone Pickens, the billionaire investor, died, I think, last night. I saw it this morning when I woke up. And he famously said something like, oh, the last billion was, easier than the first billion or something like that, right? And somebody commented on this quote, well, that didn't mean anything to the people in his life. The money, he can't spend it anywhere. The only thing in the world you can't buy is time. And you also can't buy real respect and admiration of your peers, right? What did Maya Angelou say? They're not going to remember what you did. They're going to remember how you made them feel. I mean, that's real. That's real stuff. Really, and we put in this country, to go back to the point that you were making that got us off on this tangent, we have to start focusing on the real stuff in our world. Otherwise, we're going to keep extending this artificial society that has that gives people the wrong messaging, like asking for help is a sign of weakness.
The other day I was at a conference and we were talking about employment and mental health with work and staff and running restaurants. And there was somebody there that said something that I thought was really great. Nobody on their deathbed ever says, I wish I'd worked more.
No one says that.
No one says that. And I was like, it's really true because we all have goals in life to succeed, to take care of our families, to be better people. But ultimately, like you just said, when you're in the ground, you're not going to spend the money. You're not going to, as long as you can live a good life, be happy, treat people with respect, do the right thing every day. If you can, it ultimately boils down to, can you stand and look yourself in the mirror?
Yeah.
Can you live with yourself? Do
you know who I have a lot of, and I have so much respect for these people who pursue their own happiness, because the only person who can make Andrew happy is Andrew, right? And I've been homeless in my life and I've had homes. I've had relationships and I've had times where I haven't had relationships. I've had times in my life where I've, had money and times in my life when I haven't had money. And the happiest times in my life actually none of those things were important. It's when I was actually centered and I was just grateful and happy with what I had because I was making healthy decisions for myself. And there's a woman, and God, I hope I'm getting this all right. I think I am, but Katiana Hong, who was worked with Christopher Kostow, she was the chef at Charter Oak, right? Insanely talented young woman. At the height, we're old. This is a young person's profession. No, it really, the hours, the time, all the rest of that kind of stuff. So here's a young woman in the catbird seat, working with one of the greatest chefs on planet Earth in one of the greatest physical locations to be a chef, right? In a place in California where your access to ingredients. If you're going to be a chef somewhere, what a marvelous place to cook, right?
Yeah.
And in a thriving restaurant, super popular, line out the door of people that want to work there. And she left it because she wants to have a family. And I just saw that yesterday when she announced that she was leaving. I kept thinking I should just DM her and say, "What's your next move?" Because I was like, I had met her and her husband when they came to Minneapolis to cook, and I was so impressed with them. I admired them from afar, eating their food, but I never got to spend a little time with them. And I got some time to spend a little bit of time with them one night in Minneapolis. I was so impressed with her, and I sat there and I just saw this yesterday in someone's post about it, and I was like, wow, that's leadership when you're not trying to lead by bucking the trend, by looking out for yourself, which some people would say is that you're making a selfish choice. Darn right, she's making a selfish choice to have a family and lead a certain kind of life. And I just think that's fantastic. Andrew Luck, we saw the same thing. The outrage that I thought was such bullshit when Andrew Luck said out of nowhere, "Yeah, I'm not going to play football anymore." I was like, bravo, man. That's great. You have nothing to prove to anyone. Lit up the college football world, lit up the pro world, everyone who had them in their fantasy league or, and I feel bad for fans of the Colts and for fans of his. I was a fan of his. I would have liked to have seen him play more, but what's more important is that he do what he wants to do. It's his life. He doesn't owe anybody anything.
It's a hard thing for a lot of people to make that decision because they feel like they're going down a path.
Yes.
They're in that path and they're in this high speed lane and they can't hit the brakes because, well, look at our career, look at our industry.
Yes. And
ultimately, like you said, fish that aren't swimming are floating. It's the same thing.
Right.
If you're not swimming in the fast lane, you're getting either run over or...
Well, I believe you have to keep moving. You got to be moving towards something positive.
Correct.
Right? But you were right about our industry, right? The message that, and I've seen more of it now than ever before, you don't have to, have 7 restaurants and a TV show and 4 books. That's not available for everyone, and it's not a lesson in happiness or success. It's not going to get you where you want to be. And we have had some very successful people in our industry whose legacy, hopefully, will be that don't judge a book by its cover. You never know what's going on inside someone, and better to be talking to people and sharing what's really going on, because we read about people every single week who have, either chosen to exit this world, made a conscious choice for that, or succumbed to some demon and gone off the rails with it. I just read this young chef at Cipriani Dolce in New York was died of an ecstasy overdose because he had this crazy secret life with, late night partying and, some woman took him to this apartment and the woman and the male accomplice, gave him too much bad ecstasy and then didn't call 911 when he was overdosing, and they found him dead in the apartment. And I had met this guy at an event in New York, and I was just like, oh my gosh, our choices lead us to places that are so, so scary. And I know what it's like to be an addict, right? And so when someone is being led around by their disease, no matter what it is, no matter what the ism is, we need to be messaging to people that there is a easier, softer way. There is a solution to those things. And I think it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. You got to open up and talk to people and trust them and build your people. And we need to be there to listen for other human beings,
People haven't, I think the world has forgotten how to just listen.
Sure.
I mean,
sure have. And there's actually a way to listen and a way that's not listening. Just because you're standing there while someone else is talking
without your mouth open
doesn't mean you're listening.
So there's so many things. I mean, you've touched upon addiction. Well, not just touched, but we've talked about that. We've talked about mental health. I think you really opened a door for a lot of folks, not only to speak about those things, but also to kind of see the world and embrace culture. And I think you touched a part of the U.S. that wouldn't have normally been so open-minded to those places. Yeah. And I think that I don't know if you realize how much you did that, but I've seen that in so many people that I can't even get them to use salt and butter in their cooking, for crying out loud. But yet they would love to try the things that you eat, which is, I mean, I'm like,
there is, yeah. I mean, I was very uncomfortable with that up to about 3 or 4 years ago. And I don't know why. Maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome. Someone, oh my God, you've done all this. It was so important, and you've influenced so many people. And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, well, if you only knew the problems that I was having in my real life. But once I sort of worked out some of that stuff for myself, the net was that I now just say thank you. And I also, in having stopped making Bizarre Foods and Zimmern List and Food Truck Tip and Delicious Destinations and all that, and moving on to a new place in my career, I have a greater appreciation for what I saw and accomplished, and I have a much keener sense of what it meant to so many people. I get stopped, 20 times a day. I'm super lucky with people who say, hey, dude, you changed my life, or you changed my kid's life, or I went here because you made it seem safe and comfortable and appealing. And, when it comes to places where Black and brown people live, when it comes to cultures that we think we know, but we don't know.
Yeah.
To take someone in using food as the microscope to which to look at that culture and those people and show people just what a family meal looks like in 100 and however many countries. I've been to 174 countries. I think I shot TV in over 100 of them over 14 years. That's a pretty big, deep legacy of work. And I'm not alone in it either. There's lots of people, from modern day vloggers and YouTubers who are doing that and showing people the world. Guys, I mean, I love what, Mark Wiens is doing on Migrationology. And, there's peers of ours who, legendary and awarded, like Bourdain, who I think did it better than anyone. I think it's super important for those of us who are in a position of being makers in media to show people things to increase understanding and awareness in the world, because we certainly have a world predicated on defining ourselves by our differences, right? You know, who do you like to screw? What God do you want to pray to? What music do you listen to? What language do you speak? What color is your skin? And judge. And at the end of the day, what I've learned is we all have the same hopes and dreams and fears, you know, as parents and human beings, and we have lots more in common than we have things that separate us.
The simple plate of food transcends all boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Politics, religion, family feuds, all the above.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not only you just going to those countries opened people's eyes in the U.S., but also opened the people's eyes in all those countries you visited to that.
Oh, yes.
Not everybody is ignorant.
Well,
from the U.S.
I was very lucky in that, you know, one of the differences, you know, I was lucky. My show aired in 150 countries. So people in Spain were seeing what a meal looked like in Birmingham, Alabama. People in, you know, Paraguay were seeing what people in Iceland were like, and vice versa, when they were watching my content. So that's a very, very powerful thing.
You cross culture everywhere.
Yeah, and it's the same lesson that we're trying to teach folks. So I was in the right place at the right time, at the right network that had the right distribution deal. I mean, people don't realize that, you know, as big as Food Network is, right? International distribution of those shows is very small. You know, I've had TV that to this day plays in mainland China. You know, there's not a lot of people who have a show that airs in, you know, in the PRC. That is, and that's owing to the distribution deals that the old Travel Channel made for my programming. And it's just, I mean, that's just luck. That's just luck. And so I'm very appreciative of that. And I also take it very seriously. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, and I even said it in the show. I'd rather be a good dinner guest and eat something that I may not like or may not be safe for me to eat, rather than be the douchey TV host. I mean, any day of the week, better to be a good guest, you know. And Tony did the same thing, and for a long time his content was distributed, you know, all around the world, and now is, thanks to the streamers that carry, you know, all of our shows. It's a really, really fascinating thing to see how that needle has moved for cultural appreciation through food, because everyone eats and we all have the same conversation. Every grandmother in every house I've been in, sometimes it's not a house, sometimes it's just, you know, a jungle floor. I mean, you know, people have seen my show. It's not just in you know, in cities.
I've seen you after tribal come back from some of these places.
Yeah, well, that's true. You have. And it is a, you know, in many places, I'm the only American person or only white person they've ever seen and may ever see, based on the history of that tribe or people or place, depending where it is. I mean, I can think of a dozen off the top of my head right now where that was true. So I take that responsibility really, really seriously. And so I want to be as open-minded and generous and kind and accepting. And if that means I have to eat something that is, you know, I'll comment, you know, and I don't need to tell someone I don't like it. I can just say, you have beautiful earrings, and thank them for the meal. And because my goal is I want other people to see those people as they truly are. That's the goal.
So what are the more common questions that somebody would ask you when you visited them? I mean, I'm sure you get the same question from all the folks here in the States, like, what is the craziest thing you've ever eaten?
Yes.
Right? That's the U.S. question. Yes. But what is the guest's home, or those folks that you're meeting with, say, in the jungles, in the middle of Costa Rica or somewhere?
They don't understand. The tribal people, the first people, the indigenous people of the world, especially the protected tribes, universally do not understand why we're such wimps. Universally. And will make fun of us for that. And the reason is they can't believe, they know intrinsically, but also because in many cases their kids are going to schools that an NGO set up, or they have access to information now that they didn't have 20 years ago. They know that we are not as smart and have fewer skills than they do, yet they're looked down upon. So I'll give you two really great examples.
And this could be, of course, let me preface this could be completely perceived in the wrong way in what you're saying, that because you're saying that they think we frown upon them.
We do.
But they're also...
They're way superior.
Because... And people, of course, are going to take this in the wrong way. I'm just going to put
no,
it out.
They're not. I'm telling you, they won't. I mean, here's the thing. In the tribal world, every single human being in that tribal community, man, woman, and child, is a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, an engineer, a pharmacist, a cook, a veterinarian. I mean, you just go on and on down the road. A warrior, a builder. They all, you have to have a massive skill set to survive in a world where oftentimes you are called upon to do those things immediately. And that is why they spend from the earliest age, into their early teen years, where there's typically some rite of passage for boys and girls, where they then become an adult much earlier than here, where they actually have to contribute to the tribe, right? So I go to we sent a crew. We did a pilot called Curious Cures. It was like the medicine version of Bizarre Foods, right? We're going to go and spend time with people all over the world who use jungle medicine, forward thinking, new age medicine, everything in between, to cure the ills of the world and explore. It was a travelogue show based on healing. And we sent our host down to the Peruvian Amazon, to a place that took a day and a half to get to by boat. You seaplaned in to a city that doesn't have roads, Iquitos, which is a jumping off place into the river system, Amazonian river system in that part of the country, and traveled a day and a half by boat to get to these people. Now, the tribe worshipped jaguars, right? And they would tattoo their faces with whiskers and all this kind of stuff, and they walked around in loincloths, and they would capture these frogs, very poisonous frogs, that have a bufotoxin that they secrete from their spine. It's a defense mechanism. This frog also exists in Australia. It's the only thing that kills crocodiles. The only predator. You see 30-pound giant saltwater crocs with their stomachs exploded in the estuaries because they ate too many of these frogs, right? And the frogs secrete this toxin. It kills the crocodile. So, but in very low doses, this bufotoxin makes you trip your balls off for 2 days, right? I mean, you get higher in shit, you throw up, right? Just like a lot of other hallucinogenics or opiates, and then you're even higher than you were before. And the tribal people, they do this, they actually burn it into their skin, and in very low doses. And they reach a plane of consciousness where they believe that they are better hunters. They're more attuned to the nighttime in the jungle, so when they go out and hunt, they can be more successful in bringing in food. When they want to talk to their ancestors, they can tune in to where their ancestors are. And interviewing them, when I was looking at the internal rough cuts that were circulating when the team got back, because my production company made this show, we were listening to this interview with one of the tribal shamans, and he's had a chance because they go down the river system and trade with people in other towns, and they get information back. But they also know, because of the tribal authorities and the people who, legal authorities in that river system, right, that they have been persecuted against, told to move off their lands, right? There's all kinds of issues now with that. And they are shocked that, quote unquote, people who live in what we would refer to as a more organized society, a modern life, are telling them what to do because they know what their skill set is. They can build a boat. They can build fire in 30 seconds. They can run out in the jungle and feed 80 people in 10 minutes. The skill set is massive. They're diplomats, doctors, lawyers, pharmacists. Same thing with the Juntoisi in Botswana, the Lao Su in northern Thailand, the Himba in, northern Namibia in what's called their Himba land. All the tribes that I've spent time with, the first peoples of this country who we've marginalized onto reservations. I just spent 2 days in Arizona with a group of women called Indivisible Tohono, who are trying to restore voting rights and some kind of societal equity to people marginalized on a reservation that's the size of Connecticut, that has 14,000 employees, and it's part of our voter suppression episode of this new series that I'm doing. And one of the women turned to me and said, we joke all the time. We know our skill set is to survive under the conditions we have in America over the last 200-300 years, to survive out here, displaced from, in many cases, many tribes from traditional lands and forced to move somewhere else. We have a skill set that, other people just dream about. And I think it's quantifiable. It's true. Any sociologist or anthropologist will tell you. But because of our, white nostalgia in this country, because of our systemic racism, because of our propping up of the white patriarchy and on and on and on, we have created a culture that wants to marginalize all those people, or think because your skin is dark and you wear a loincloth and you live in a jungle somewhere, that somehow you don't quite have the skill set that a lawyer in New York has. Well, let me tell you something. That tribal person living on that river system in the Amazon has 200 times the skill set that lawyer in New York does. The modern world, we've weaned ourselves off of this. And there's all these pioneering reclamation efforts by different groups here in this country to kind of restore that skill set. I mean, there are a lot of guys, and look, I'm not arguing for violence. I'm just saying, I know a lot of people, men and women, that don't know how to make a fire, don't know how to win a fist fight, don't know how to kiss someone else properly, don't know how to cook their own meal or hunt for it. I mean, there's a certain amount of skills that I think it's kind of good to have in your back pocket in case you need to.
You mean when the electricity goes off?
Exactly.
I talk about this a lot, actually. There's 3 things that I consistently say are mandatory for everybody. Learn to swim.
Yep.
Ride a bike.
Yep.
Shift a car.
Yep.
All 3 of those things will either save your life or somebody else's.
Yep.
Basics.
Yep.
Then from there, moves on. Then you learn how to.
But you make a really good point. I live in Minnesota. Electricity goes out several times during the summer because of some incredible hailstorms. It gets really, really humid. The sky explodes. And because the earth is wobbling on its axis and falling into the sun, and our government isn't telling us about it, it just gets worse and worse every year. I learned that down at Area 51 just last week, where I was also shooting another show.
Did you get to go there?
I've been there before, but yes, I'm kidding, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
I was pro.
But you joke all the time. What do you do when the electricity goes out? I mean, there are people I know who don't know how to start a generator or what you would plug into it to then put the electricity in the house back on. Now, it can be a life-saving effort if you have a sick child, elderly living with you. Do you know how to do? I know this sounds crazy, but basic first aid. People do the YMYWCAs all over, the YMYWHAs all over the country. You can take a 2 or 3 day basic first aid course and just know how to give someone the Heimlich, resuscitate someone, just kind of the basics. And if you don't know how to do it, the Heimlich is, I mean, I don't like to make jokes about this, but I had never had the opportunity to do it. Then when 2 years ago, I used it twice because someone was choking next to me. But to be able to look at them calmly and say, because, the big sign is if they can't make any noise at all. And I say, hold up a finger if you're choking. Just very calmly try to calm them down, because if they're getting hyper about it, they can constrict more muscle, it can get worse, right? And because my friend wasn't making any noise and she just held up a finger, and I just very calmly got up and I Heimlich, second pump, out came the chewy piece of beef tenderloin, which is a real frequent offender in the Heimlich world.
Because it's too soft.
It's soft and mushy, and we hate that cut of meat, don't we?
Does everybody know what that cut of meat does?
The beef tenderloin. It's just a terrible. It's not one of my favorite cuts.
It's not mine either, but most people don't even know what that does.
That's true. You know what it does? It makes people choke. I can tell you that right now. And so out this thing popped. We were at this big dinner party, and nobody noticed. And I was like, I just saved this woman's life. You want. I'd like a little recognition, but I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. All I'm saying is because of my travel and the stuff that I've done, I've had to take basic first aid, right? We need people on the crew who know how to administer basic first aid. I did a Survivor episode of Bizarre Foods 8 years ago, and I got to they got some Navy SEALs and some instructors from SEER School, the Search of Aid and Rescue School. And I worked with them for 2 days of minimal teaching. But now when I want to forage, when I want to build a fire, if I want to catch fish in the wild, I mean, there's so many. I know how to clean water on my own with no other tools. I know how to do stuff.
Is that the moss trick?
That no one else. There are certain plants that you can actually use to strain water and drink it through, and there's ways to create a system that obviously if it's chemically tainted,
of course,
in a urban environment here, it doesn't work. But if you have dirty water, you're on an island and you have water that's not necessarily safe to drink, there are ways to clean it. And I know this sounds really crazy, but there's little books you can go online and learn this kind of stuff. And I would encourage people. I'm not a survivalist. I'm not a prepper. I'm not an alarmist. I live in a cushy house in a nice suburb, in Minnesota. I'm not going to lie. It's a nice setup, right? But if I ever need to do that kind of thing, I know what to do. And I think we've lost that in society.
I think we have two ends of the spectrum going on in the world right now. We have the people that think the zombie apocalypse is coming next week and they're stockpiling and they're overthinking it. Yep. And then you have the other end that have no conscious thought of, yes. It's like, what? What's going on? You're bleeding to death on the floor. Such a simple thing as a tourniquet.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard. And I think there's a change in time. And I think.
Yeah. And I love that, I go to the checkout at the supermarket and you see those magazines like Simple, and they're all themed the same way. It's all about returning to something. It's a nostalgic look back, and I think in some cases we were talking, I think before we actually started recording, about restricting cell phone access to our children. Nothing is healthier, right? There's now study after study after study that having that thing glued to your hand is not good for me. It's not good for you. It's not good for our kids. It's good to step back. We rush headlong into things because they make money. I mean, look at this whole vaping thing, right?
Jesus.
I mean, everyone thought that was the solution. Turns out it's making people sicker. Margarine was the solution because butter wasn't good for, right? Butter was unhealthy. Well, it turns out margarine with all those trans fats.
That was Fabio's fault.
With all of those, trans fats and stuff for them were much worse for your heart and everything. Right. So we thought email. You talked about time before. You're younger than I am. But I remember a point in time where we didn't write 200 letters a day. We actually picked up the phone and called people. So there was that human connection. So they invent this thing called email so that we don't have to write as many letters and we can connect with people all the time. And now it dominates some people's lives. I get 200 of them a day, and I have to put I'm out of the what is my auto reply? My auto reply says I only check emails once a day, and I don't necessarily reply once a day, because everyone thinks if they've emailed me, it's like instantaneous. Yeah. I get texts from people even with the message up saying, "Hey, I emailed you a half hour ago. Where's the blank or the blank?" And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I'm doing my day. I'm not here to answer your question.
Living? You're living?
I'm living.
You're supposed to stop.
I'm living my best life, Chris.
Oh my God, I got an email. Everybody stop what you're doing. Don't you love it? Wait a minute. You just sent me an email. I'm in the middle of a shoot. I'm in Namibia, and I'm supposed to answer it right now, but you're going to text me.
I'm not.
Yeah.
But by the same token, to bring this full circle, when you build relationships with people and they text you and say, "Oh, you're in town. Would you my podcast?" I'm glad that I can embrace the technology.
Yes, and when I called you in a panic and you called me back from Germany, it's some ungodly hour in the morning.
But that's when someone... do you want to know what the reason is? Because I know the next time it's me that I need to call someone and do something. I just did, because I've been sober a long time and I work on a lot of these issues, people in the industry know that I'm a good number to call if they have a friend or someone who's in trouble. And it is the most valuable thing that I do. Number one, it makes me feel good and useful. But number two, it also takes me out of my own selfishness and my own pity pot that I find myself in, because helping another human being, the reciprocal effect of being generous and actually helping other people is feeling good about yourself and staying right-sized. And I just think that's a really important thing. I feel bad for the people that don't have that opportunity or haven't set up their life that way. It's one of the great things about parenting and being in a long-term relationship with a significant other, however you choose to define that, is that you actually get a chance to have conflict and work on yourself and be responsible to someone else and walk in the door and say, "Honey, I'm sorry about what I said this morning." I mean, that's a great benefit for those of us that are in relationships. Guys like you and I have a greater opportunity to say those words, but I digress.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could go on. The scary part is you and I could go on for like hours.
We could. You have to invite me back.
Okay. So I do this thing. So it's just a quick fire. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yours is a little different.
Lightning round?
Lightning round.
Okay.
Hamburger, hot dog. I'm gonna screw you up.
No. Hot. I'm gonna go hot dog.
Everybody
because
loves encased meats.
When I'm at a when I have the choice in front of me, I do hot dog first. And when I go to a stadium, I have to have a hot dog. And I love that kind of food. I love you and I share a passion for that kind of stuff. Do you remember when our wives and our children were so angry with us when we went to Disney World together? The Zimmern Cosentino trip. Do you remember you also had your mom on that trip?
She was like, "You guys are going to die."
Okay. So we had I mean, it was crazy, but over the course of a day, what made everyone angry at us is that we devolved into 8-year-olds. Our wives demanded of our children to elevate their game as the day went on, because kids can get really squirrely at a place like Disney World, right?
Oh.
With all of the, bright lights and, things bouncing off. And you and I became overgrown children, and I remember the very last thing, we were like, "We have to get a hot dog." And they were like looking at us like, "We have to get the kids to bed." We started at 8 a.m. It's grueling. It's hot out. Everyone's miserable. And you and I are like, "Hot dogs," and it's 10 p.m. and we had to go into that one little booth in the Magic Kingdom and beg them to make us hot dogs. And everyone else, "Anyone want one? Anyone want one?" Everyone was like, "No, we've been eating all day. We want to go home to the hotel and shower and watch TV." And you and I were like, "No, we're getting hot dogs." And we got into a lot of trouble. Yes, hot dog.
We got a lot of trouble.
Hot dog.
I forgot about that.
That was funny.
Of that. I actually have a picture of that. I got to find it.
Just dynamite.
I'm going to have to find that when I put up the podcast. Sushi. So nigiri or sashimi?
Nigiri.
Uni, caviar.
That's a trick question. They're both eggs.
Oh, good answer. That's actually the best answer I've heard yet.
Because here's the thing.
Yeah, but one's a gonad.
Over the last couple years, I have, but asexual or trisexual.
Correct.
So, I mean, over the last 3 or 4 years, for whatever reason, there's been a caviar pipeline in my life, and I've had more caviar maybe in the last 3 years than I have in the previous. And I've been with you, in places where all of a sudden, someone you work with has, dumped a big tin of caviar in our laps and a bag of potato chips, and we eat the whole thing, right?
Yep.
So it's delicious. I love it, and I understand what a privilege that is. But I have really developed an insane appetite for salty cured fish parts over the course of my life, and caviar is one of the great ones, right? So, and I love salty dried fish. I just love that. I love that flavor, and the fishier and funky. It's why I like a poisse over other cheeses. Just like stinky anything I love, and so I love fish eggs. But I just was doing. Someone asked me. I'm figuring out my demo for a food festival coming up, and I'm doing a thing with urchin. I'm doing 2 or 3 different recipes with it. So I had it on my brain because I'm also obsessed with sea urchin. I have a chance to dive for it in several countries, and I just love that there's something unique about nothing else tastes like sea urchin in the world. So, but yes, they're both eggs. So I take an exception. I'll go C, both.
Both.
Continue.
Wow. Okay.
But backed up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this one is quite heated. Risotto or paella?
Oh, fuck.
Depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, well, yeah. Do not tell Jose this, but I'm going to say risotto.
Because Italians aren't lazy and they know how to stir, and the Spaniards just put it on the fire and walk away because
What I love
that's my argument with
what I love about paella, cooked properly, and historically it's always done over an open fire so that smoke and that wood flavor curls over the top of that pan. The crusting I love, the variety of ingredients I love. It's easier to make risotto. Paella the right way requires more work, which I'm willing to do. I love making it at home. But at the end of the day, risotto and I can do more things with it. So I'm just going to say risotto, but nobody tell Jose Andres because he will kill me.
No, he won't. We have a debate all the regular time. He tells me I don't know how to cook, and I tell him he's too lazy to stir the rice. That's our conversation. This has been an ongoing debate for many years. Okay. Ham. You get 3 choices. American, Italian, or Spanish?
Not even close. American.
Country ham?
Not even close. And the reason is it took me a while to find the people, that are making such exceptional American hams that I've developed a keener desire for it. Every once in a while when I have, Iberico, Balota, double X, $200 a pound, and it just melts in your mouth. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the best ham in the world. I'm a bright, shiny objects person, so it's usually what I had last. I was in Phoenix, and there's a chef there at Andreoli Grocery, for anyone there in town, who makes his own prosciutto, cures it in his butcher shop there, and he cut it coarsely with a short knife for me, like in uneven pieces. Some of them were thick, and I was like, oh God, this isn't even sliced right. And I was like, this isn't going to be good. And I put it in my mouth, and it was the most sublimely delicious flavored stuff. It's extraordinary. However, at the end of the day, and we all have our biases, so I don't want to get letters, but when you get a ham from a guy like Dwight Muse in Nancy, Kentucky, who only makes 300-400 hams a year, he's been doing it for a long time. So, but it's only 300-400 in, 300-400 out, right? And we profiled him in one of my shows, and he and I have stayed friends, and I'm lucky enough to be on, his short list of people that can actually get one every other year. You eat a bite of that ham and you realize that that's everything a hog wanted to be when it was growing up. I mean, it's just the finest expression of antique porcine humility that I've ever had. It's just extraordinary.
There's something to be said for country hams.
Yeah, I love it. And then I learned from a grandmother that, when I take the fat and little ends and I put them in the oil when I'm frying chicken, stuff like that lends that little bit of funkiness to the chicken. I'll take cubes of that, fermented fat, and I'll put it in the pan. I'll make scrambled eggs in that, or risotto. I'll use that as the fat to start my rice with, and it gives that funky little flavor to it, or in a matrician or some kind of sauce. So I use every single piece of that ham. But then when you get down to the end and you boil it for 3 hours and then you cool it, and that ham loses its funk and its saltiness, and it just becomes this boiled ham heaven for whatever you want to do, a ham salad, throw it in a pasta, whatever. I'm kind of obsessed with them. I'm in a period in my life where I'm obsessed with American country hams.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
With milk or without?
Without. Now, I do drink a lot of tea, and I have probably 40 at my house. I mean, I have a hot water machine to temperature. I mean, I got the whole thing because I do love tea. But if I'm on a desert island, I love coffee, and I love a cup of coffee in the morning. That's my thing. I'll drink tea in the afternoon and evening, but I'm coffee in the morning.
Cheese or dessert?
Cheese. I love sweets, but I've never been a chocolate guy. If you told me desserts disappeared, doesn't matter. But I buy cheeses at some of our local cheese shops in Minnesota, the places where it's not wrapped in plastic, where they actually cut the pieces for you and then wrap it up for you in paper to take it home so it breathes, because it's a living thing. And then I put it in my cheese platter with my domed lid on it that has a hole in it so it breathes. And it every day for the next, sometimes I eat it in 12 hours. Sometimes I eat it over the course of 4 days. Depends on the type and what it is. And the flavor changes. It's an obsession, and it's something that I just adore. And the funkier, nastier, the dirtiest camembert you can find, the epoisse that no one else wants to eat. I don't want spoiled blue vein cheeses that are ammoniated and not good, but really ripe blue vein cheeses I'm crazy about.
Amazing.
Yeah. I know you are too.
So I was going to do one more. It was either chocolate or fruit, but you already answered it. It's
fruit. And I do believe, like cilantro or there's some people who are like, oh no, I never eat that. If chocolate disappeared from planet Earth, I would never miss it. I wouldn't even really notice.
It's funny. I actually
and by the way, cacao is disappearing, just in case anyone wants to.
Yeah, I know. It's being over. I do like raw cacao.
Oh, my God. When you get... That's like
so good.
Oh, it's like a Sour Patch Kid with a cocoa kicker.
And I like cocoa nibs. I like using them more in savory than I do actually like the chocolate as a sweet item.
Yeah. Yeah. I love chocolate in moles and just all that stuff. It's
glorious. Very Italian to use those in the old school Italian ways. Very much so. Well, Andrew, thank you very much. It's time now for me to make you dinner.
I love you. Yeah, that's the other good thing. I'm walking into the dining room and I'm going to eat, and I'm very happy about that.
Yes, and by the way, we do have a lot of country hams here for you.
Oh, fantastic.
We do something here called Around the World in 8 Hams.
Really?
Yeah, so we have Spanish, French, Italian, and a whole bunch of American.
At Jackrabbit?
Yeah.
Here at the Dunaway Hotel in Portland, Oregon?
It just became an infomercial. We're going to call it at this point.
Love you.
Love you too, bro.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.